From Italy, from Camera dei Deputati, Andrea Mazziotti di Celso.
Thank you. I also wish to thank for this opportunity and this discussion, which I think is an example of what should happen more often in terms of dialogue between the European Parliament and the national parliament. As many colleagues stated, we are facing a very different time from others, I think, because even the financial crisis was a different kind of situation. The crisis we are dealing with now have to do with the fundamental principles and values of our society, of our continent, and it is particularly important that in this phase Europe plays a significant role. I agree very much with what Mr. Angel said, that the issue of democracy and the lack of democracy is often overstated. I think the real issue in many cases is the distance which exists between the European institutions and the citizens and the local parliaments. And my experience from a national parliament is that the attention that is paid by the local parliament and by the press and by the citizens to the legislation process here, to the decision-making process here, is not adequate often to the importance of what we are dealing with. Many times the discussion is seen as a discussion between the national country and Europe, rather than being a discussion on the political aspects of the decision that you're dealing with. And this is altering the relationship, because most of the legislation that governs our countries, and the most important probably, is coming from Europe, and yet this perception is not seen as a shared process between the parliaments and the EU authorities, is seen as a confrontation between the individual countries and Europe, and this affects very much the relationship with the individual citizens. This is, I think, has to be the focus of the efforts. All the very important comments that have been made on the changes to the institutions, to the relationships among institutions, are very important. I think all of what was indicated in the report from Mrs. Bresso and Mr. Brok is very useful. The only part which I would add to that, and I don't think it's worth going back on those points which were so well described, is I think the physical presence of the Commission, of the Parliament, in its relationship with the local parliaments is very important. I know that Mr. Timmermans announced a stronger presence of the commissioners with the European parliaments. I think it's important that in all the discussion within the parliaments there is a presence, not only within the parties, but really in relationship and occasions of discussions like this on specific topics, specific pieces of legislation, would be very important, because I think it's important to bring to the attention of the public, not only of the members of the parliament, but of the public, of the press, of the media, that certain legislation, certain laws are being discussed at the European level. Today that perception is too weak, and the result is that these things seem to be coming from high, coming from far, while most of the times the government, including our government, is directly involved. It's a political decision of the very country which is then discussing that in the Parliament. Thank you.